No, it's obviously a massive employer globally, this business, the gaming betting industry. But do you think is it fair to say there's a stigma attached to working in the betting industry? And is getting the best talent, young talent from university or wherever, a bit more difficult than it would be in other industries?
We've not really had any pushback on being betting, have we?
No.
Not that we've known, anyway. It's
I wouldn't say so.
no, I mean certainly working in sports betting when we've put out job specs. Sports is something that people are really active.
I think betting as well.
Yeah,
I mean, personally, I got into to gaming or sports betting in particular. That's what I've always been very keen on, based on a passion for sports, right? So if you then look at the different ways of consuming sports betting, I mean, if you do it based on a more emotional, motivated sort of experience, rush-based behavior, I mean, there's a lot of fun ways to enhance your ways of enjoying a sports event. And I think those things combined is for us something great. I mean, that's what's driven us into organising event and writing news about the industry. So I think most people out there are very keen to be involved in the sports betting industry. Mm-hmm. And obviously what we're doing as well is we connect into the sports industry as well. We recently hired Kalma, which is an ex-chief commercial officer of AC Milan and global brand director at Ferrari. So we have hired some very good people in, also to bridge the gap a little bit more between the betting and the sports industry. So, truth to be told, I think it's a very, very appealing industry for most
Well, I mean, I don't think the image is a problem for recruitment, to be honest with you. I think it's more of a problem with other sort of wider organisations. So you get the FA washing hands. It's very hard to get a bank account, certainly if you're an operator. We keep getting feedback, people struggling to get banks to take their business because of the way they perceive the industry. So I don't think recruitment is an issue. I think it is more of a wider business perception, really.
Okay, that's interesting. So my misconception, possibly because the responsible gambling lobby, etc., got the loudest voices and they get heard more, and so people start to think that way.
Mm-hmm. I mean, we've not seen that manifested yet. I'm not saying it won't, but yeah, I mean the problem gambling lobby, when they've got a point to make sure it's made. Sometimes it's overzealous and it can lead to sort of bad decisions being made at a political level. But at the same time, we should be open to listening to them when they've got a point. The problem is that what we've got with that at the moment is there's no constructive dialogue at all at the moment. It's all attack, and there's nobody on the industry side of things.
But a good point there is that, I mean, we've been trying to raise this point when we kind of promote, or as you would say, market the events, and say that if you think and you raise the question yourself, if there are certain worries and issues around this, how do you address it? I mean, that's very, you'll say, the other reason from actually being very passionate about the industry, bringing it together to try and address these issues and talk about, how do you have a sound discussion around this? Because as you said, it's more like attack. And having a couple of events in London a year where you go in and you go into all the different issues and opportunities in the industry, then certainly these are some of the issues that will be addressed. So just another reason why we think that what we created is something that should be embraced by even more people on a broader perspective, because you don't have other options to discuss this. I mean, especially not if there's a set agenda from certain parts of the industry, not from our industry, in general, then it's hard to deal with.
I mean, what we're trying to do is give a platform to have some of these sensible discussions. Sometimes, there's a nettle has to be grasped, and the industry needs to take a look at itself, and that's what some of our conferences are wanting to address.
And I'm sure we'll also listen if we got the feedback. early on. We're very open to taking ideas and suggestions to how we can, further refine our events, and then especially the conference side, the discussions, to address parts that people really are concerned with or want to debate. So, I mean, that's also something we've been trying to encourage a bit more by reaching out earlier as we grow and have more time. We have more opportunities to plan our event ahead of time, and part of that is certainly to look at what's on the agenda, what should be on the agenda, and then start speaking to the right people and plan the agenda so it deals with all these areas, I would say. So,
okay. Right, moving on, I want to talk, you mentioned portals earlier. So news, America's casino, sports payments, and eSports. Now, eSports, I'm told, is a growing area. Can you tell us a bit about eSports, because I was clueless?
Yeah, I mean, we started our own eSports brand as a news brand initially, that turned into a news and events brand now. It was called eSports Insider. We started in August 2016. Yeah. So it's turning 3 in August this year. And we had a very good journalist in the team that was quite passionate about esports in terms of following how it was growing. And we sort of sat down and had a chat about this, and agreed that it would be a nice extension of the existing media portals at that point to include some esports coverage within it. So we started doing it with one person, and now I think our news team has grown to more or less 2.5, 3 full-time writers, and a lot of freelancers connected in as well. And we're talking Asia, Latin America, so we got a quite widespread coverage of what's going on in the esports industry. And then we created esports events, ESR London, that we plugged in initially to betting on sports. We now pulled it away because we feel the esports brand has become that big that it has its own feed. So now it's doing events in New York, in LA. It's doing one in London again. So it's become its own business now. It's very much still a company sitting within our group, but we are giving it a lot more freedom to work the way it should work, because I think from an SBC perspective, it would be a lot about esports and betting. But certainly the way you have to treat it is you have to treat it as esports and betting, because they're very different. The ones investing in esports from more the non-betting side are companies like Microsoft, big companies, right?
Big blue chip.
And they obviously have a bit of an issue sometimes with the betting side, because it can be a bit hard to digest, and betting is still seen as what betting is. So we have these different sides of the business that is clearly a non-betting as well as it has a betting side as well. And today we're looking at 6-7 guys full time in the company, and it's growing. It's got a very, very good, strong news portal. I think we're seeing more than 75,000 unique users a month, so it's quite active.
No, I mean, esports globally is fascinating. Certainly, if you've not grown up with playing on consoles, certainly multiplayer consoles, it's a bit hard to get your head around. People are paying £80 a ticket to watch four guys in a team play against 4 others, trying to shoot each other on the big screens in teams. But it can be fascinating watches. It's huge, big business. Again, they have a bit of a problem around betting, more of a perception of it more than anything else. I mean, in the early days, people were betting on it, even without bookmakers. There's a thing called skin betting, where basically they bet in-game items. So if you've won a rocket launcher, you could bet that rocket launcher against the Jeep that this outcome is going to happen. And that was all happening a bit under the radar. But that's all played itself up, and you've got companies like Pinnacle, like Betway, taking it seriously and taking bets on it. But it's certainly from an audience perspective, esports is going up there.
It's also worth mentioning, I guess, it's very much a young audience. So it's kind of like when you keep talking about millennials, it's kind of like probably one of the key areas to focus on if you want
Actually, it's even the next generation from millennials now, like Gen Y.
So because as you say, very keen on gaming, and gaming is everywhere on the phone, and connected into whether it's desktop or PlayStation, Xbox, but this certainly provided a whole new level of entertainment and ways of positioning your brands to reach these guys.
I mean, you find it's starting to eke into the sports schedules as we start getting 13, 14 different sports channels. But where the broadcasters get it wrong is they tend to always do football esports, soccer esports, because it's a transition. Football. But watching football esports, certainly from my perspective, is pretty dull, and it's like 5% of the market. It's one person playing football against it. It's not that engaging, but certainly with the team games, that's far more engaging, far more interesting. It's just a bit more of a barrier to get people to watch it. But once people are watching it, then it becomes strategic, it's fun. It's quite spectacle.
You mentioned that people pay £80 a ticket. Is that like a pay-to-view thing, like you would do a boxing match or something like that? You watch it in your home online?
No, this is actually going to arenas.
Right. So these guys that play are sort of the new sort of wave of sports stars in a way.
Absolutely. I mean, there's trading. There's people going to different teams. I mean, Ruud Hullit's got sponsoring an esports team, wasn't he? Mm-hmm. He spoke about that last year's betting on football.
They got the player from Leicester as well.
Yeah, Christian Fuchs.
So
he's got one. A lot of the clubs have got their own esports team, but again, focusing on football.
Esports players or player representative, in FIFA, if it's the UK football clubs or even on an international level. So it's quite interesting. It's a very interesting industry.
Yeah, still needs to mature a bit. It's still very much at the early stages of stuff. So, there's a lot to write about.
So you got in right at the beginning of it.
I suppose so. From a news provision, I think there's only one comparable B2B news source other than our own. And then they're a much bigger organisation than we are. So, I guess so.